Livid Instruments has hit another home run in the controller world, this time with Bass 2, a pad controller that features 32 velocity-sensitive pads, 9 touch faders, 8 capacitive touch buttons, and 8 regular function buttons on the side, just as its predecessor, Livid Bass, featured. The pads on Bass 2 are raised as opposed to being flush mounted on the original unit. A nice change, I think. I personally find that having raised pads makes it a little easier to sort of know where I'm at on a controller. And beyond that, there are a few more physical differences as well. The most obvious one being that it is a little bigger than Bass 1. It occupies a bit more real estate. I'm not entirely sure if that's by default or design, because they've included a power supply in Bass 2 so that your LEDs can be brighter if you need them to be plugged in, which I personally haven't, I couldn't see a reason to plug them in because they're already about 2 or 3 times brighter than the LEDs in the original Bass, so that's awesome. But going back to what I said, if I'm not sure if it's by default or by design, I mean that because it seems that the actual construction of the unit is different, and that kind of lends itself to having this recessed USB port here on the side instead of being like a flush mounted one, just like the pads are on the original one for the USB cable. So the cable kind of locks into place instead of sticking out in an unsightly way from the controller. And I did find that sometimes it was kind of easy for the cable to come out of my original Bass, which I haven't had that problem with this. And it's one piece on the top, and everything's screwed in at the bottom. So it's a really nice looking unit. It's really cool. It doesn't feel much heavier than the old unit. It feels about the same. So you won't break your back carrying it around with your laptop and sound card and all that other stuff there. But that seems to be about it in terms of obvious differences, though, because what is going on under the hood is pretty much in line with the original Bass in terms of functionality. All the scripts, mappings, and templates that were created for Bass will work with Bass 2, including but not limited to all the Ableton Live scripts, Reason scripts, tractor mappings, Logic and Liquid Rhythm, CellDNA, and some video software out there as well. And then of course there are the Bitwig remote scripts and a whole bunch of Macs devices, and it supports FL Studio now as well. It doesn't stop there. You can also configure the Bass to be used however you want it to be to suit your needs via the web editor. It's really easy to use. So you can choose like different fader display modes, change the velocity sensitivity on your pads, switch button functions, customize colors, MIDI output, all that stuff. And then you can save those settings to the internal memory banks and recall them with the press of a button. And all of these things combined further cement the fact that the Livid Bass, and obviously now that's translated over to Bass 2, it's the most seamlessly adaptable controller that I've found, because the fact is you already have all these pre-prepared user remote scripts and mappings and stuff like that, especially for different softwares that a lot of people like to use together. Like there are plenty of people that use Tractor and Ableton and FL Studio and Reason, and having one dedicated piece of hardware that can interact with all of those is wonderful. If you're familiar with the original Bass, if you own it or have used it or whatever, you'll feel completely at home on Bass 2. The pads feel excellent. The Bass pads have been my favorite out of all the different controllers that I've used. I really like the size of them and just kind of the thickness of them, the overall feel. I think it's really responsive whether I'm drumming or trying to play in melodies. And I like them even more here on Bass 2 because they're raised as opposed to being flush. Obviously, the improved LED lighting is a welcome change. I know that I had some issues in kind of bright lighting where they were significantly dim in comparison to other controllers, but it wasn't too terrible because my shadow would kind of bring it out if I was hovering over to press something. But I can totally see how that would be an issue if you're playing in an outdoor gig or bright stage lighting or anything like that, where you can't use shadows to your advantage, or it just wouldn't have any benefit. So it's really great that Livid took care of that. And it's particularly amazing that they've managed to do this and make this more affordable than the original unit. I didn't think that there was much room for them to improve there. It's a high quality controller, but the stuff that they have added here on the Bass 2 just makes it a 10 out of 10. It's a home run for sure.